all to the return of the Irving Hospitality Industry Annual Meeting. We're so pleased to have you with us this morning today to mark this occasion, and particularly to be with us as we present the inaugural recipients of the hospitality industry's Spirit of Irving Awards. My name is Robert Martinez, and I have the honor of serving this year as chairman of the board of the Irving Convention Visitors Bureau. Thank you all for being here and making time to acknowledge the impact this industry makes on our community. We have a number of elected and appointed officials, current and past, that we could recognize, but we all know who they are, and if I took the time to announce all of them, we wouldn't get to the rest of our meal. So I'm going to skip that, but please know that our partnership with the city and all of our other elected officials is wonderful, and we so appreciate the partnership that we have. This event began several years ago to bring the community and the industry together in recognition of the partnerships that drive our collective success. Everything this industry does has a positive and immediate impact on the Irving community. We bring visitors to the community who stay in our hotels, who eat in our restaurants, who shop in our stores, who fill up at our gas stations, who make copies at our printers, who decorate with our florists, who find last-minute fixes at our local hardware stores, and who hire professionals who live and work here in Irving.
It was by most accounts a great, strong year. 2013 began with a bang and most definitely did not whimper on its way out. The Irving Convention Center marked its third birthday yesterday, with 864 events now under our belt, attracting almost 600,000 people, and generating more than $9 million in income since we opened. Our new fiscal year has begun in a big way, with 158 bookings already on the calendar, another 35 currently in negotiations, and another 50 prospects we're working to close. For the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we finished the year by directly booking 132,000 definite room nights, representing 552 groups. We generated more than $18 million in media exposure and now have over 10,000 enthused and interactive social media followers. Websites have been updated and mobilized, new social media outlets channeled, checkbooks have balanced, audits have proven clean, network uptime seldom ever lands below the magic 100% mark. Crowds big and small converged on Irving throughout the year, whether it was 10,000 Zest Fest attendees, 20,000 sci-fi fans, 225,000 of our closest friends during the HP Byron Nelson Championship, newfound friends at the LPGA North Texas Shootout, and the Texas Wild Team Tennis. And quite possibly the most colorful and distinct of all, the estimated 92,000 who filled the shores of Lake Carolyn for Red Bull's Flugtag. And by the way, we occasionally get questions from the community asking just how many events are taking place at the convention center, since people don't always see a lot of cars here. Well, I can assure you, with 864 events happening since we opened, that is a lot going on, even if you can't always see it from the freeway. But that's a little bit by design, because the standards of the Las Colinas Association actually required that we build the garage in a way that hides the cars. So, and our groups that are using hotels are usually coming over in shuttles and not in their cars, so unless we're having an occasional Easter Sunday crowd like we did this weekend for Zest Fest or Comic-Con, where the cars take over the vacant lots around us, you just don't necessarily see a lot of cars. But I digress. Our staffs continue to do award-winning work. CVent named Irving to its top 50 meeting cities. Our 15th and 16th Adrian Awards were received, acknowledging marketing and public relations successes, and industry trade publications such as Meetings and Conventions and Successful Meetings once again recognized us for customer service. In addition to service and architectural awards, the newest award for the Irving Convention Center will be presented in Austin later this week, when the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities and the Accessibility Professionals Association recognize the Irving Convention Center for its above and beyond accommodations and a fully inclusive environment. Thank you. But 2013 is now one for the books, and 2014 is well underway, and the good news is the industry outlook remains positive. The corporate economy continues to hold strong, and Irving benefits greatly because of that. The American Airlines merger is final, not quite complete, but it's coming there, and a new, stronger airline is emerging. DFW Airport remains a vital, vibrant player. The DART Orange Line is not only on track, but it appears ahead of pace and will open inside DFW's Terminals A and B certainly by this December, and quite possibly quite a bit sooner based on this weekend's morning news. I know for many of us in this room we thought that day would never come, but it is truly around the corner. Irving will be the first stops on that line as it departs DFW with our convention center here at station number 3. Following that DART line east, Irving is also a few stops from Love Field, and in October of this year, the Wright Amendment goes away, allowing Southwest Airlines to truly be free to move around the country from here. Industry experts predict this will make fares into Dallas-Fort Worth even more competitive, positioning our area very well for the success of both airports. And the benefit of Irving's prime location between DFW and Love Field, it will never be stronger. While the end of the Wright Amendment eliminates one element of government influence on travel, there are still others causing impact. We're paying very close attention to the federal government's continued discussion on meeting attendance for government employees and agencies, and worried over yet another overcorrection when it comes to the government responsibly managing travel and training for its own agencies. Gas taxes here in Texas and at the federal level can't possibly be expected to sustain infrastructure needs, especially if the revenues aren't going to be protected for what they were put in place to do. And I know our state representative leads and bleeds with this statement, and we are right there with you. If a long-term funding solution for maintaining infrastructure throughout this country isn't identified, then the chaos that we all live with Thanksgiving week travel will soon become the norm. For us in Irving, the massive highway, mass transit, and airport infrastructure surrounding us will continue to need significant investment. Today's federal and state highway funding solutions simply can't be sustained in a way that provides long-term viability. Waiting 20 and 30 years for funding to be in place to address the needs the right way simply can't work. Travel is one of this country's strongest, most stable, and fastest rising exports, 4 times faster than any other. The industry is now larger than the automotive manufacturing industry, and it's leading the way in job recovery across the U.S. As of December, the travel industry had recovered 99% of the jobs it lost during the recession. By contrast, the rest of the economy has recovered just 86% of its lost jobs. And the travel industry is adding jobs at a 9% faster rate than the rest of the economy. There are more than 12,500 jobs in the industry right here in Irving, with a payroll of over $275 million. It is a key part of this community's economy, a key part of our recovery, a key part of our stability. It's a key part of the amenities our residents and corporations enjoy. Jobs that keep our restaurants running, our attractions operating, our shuttles moving smoothly. All of those make those businesses more successful, which is good news for our residents and for our visitors. With that, I'd like to now introduce Greg Malcolm, a member of the ICVB board and the chair of the Irving Las Colinas Hotel Association, for a look at the state of the hotel industry.
December data for Irving from the Smith Travel Research Report show Irving finished 2013 with occupancies at 68.7%, up 4% from the prior year. An average daily rate citywide at $91.09, up almost 6% from 2012. A 10% increase in our revenue per available room allowed many hotels to close our 2013 books in a very positive way. With occupancies where ours sits today, you ordinarily see limited service hotels develop into the market, get way out there. Thankfully here in Irving, thanks to the leadership of this board and the city council back in 2006, we right-sized future development by setting new standards for hotel construction. This has allowed Irving to concentrate its hotel development opportunities on those projects that can generate demand, not just supply, which is what allow us to sustain our recovery a lot longer. The end of 2013 also saw group bookings across the industry nationwide surge. That recovery has been lagging a bit behind the individual business traveler, which is our bread and butter here at Irving, but it's definitely back. The end-of-year surge has left a solid base of group business on the books for hoteliers going into the new year. Technology continues to impact travel. Since the advent of the telephone, and then the fax, and now Skype and FaceTime, there's been the threat that technology will eliminate the need for face-to-face. But that still isn't the case. Definitely technology changes how we do face-to-face, but face-to-face is still an important part of how business gets done and how relationships get built. Even all the generations that are growing up tweeting, they're still meeting in person. Meetings always mean business. Face-to-face will always matter. Maura mentioned earlier concerns about an overcorrection by the federal government in regards to government employees receiving necessary training and development through meetings and conferences. But I will call it what it is, a knee-jerk reaction to a bad and unmanaged behavior by a very few. The General Services Administration eliminated nearly 50 conferences last year, in many cases paying substantial cancellation fees to avoid a meeting. In effect, paying a lot for nothing. That's just bad for our industry. That's bad for the communities banking on hosting these travelers who now sit looking at big holes on their calendars. And it's plain ridiculous for a taxpayer to get absolutely nothing for an ill-advised attempt to save political face. Regardless of what continues to happen with the federal government, the Irving hotel industry is looking forward to another strong year in 2014. Transient business travel is back. Group business is on the upswing. We know we ride an economic curve here, though, and with every boom, there will be a bust. The good news is Irving's hotels should be in far better position to ride out the next market downturn because what's starting to come out of the ground all around Irving. Irving hotels are excited about the development news happening throughout Irving on the type of things our customers and prospects keep asking for. We want to see those state birds of Texas, otherwise known as construction cranes, all over the city. Everyone asks what's going to happen to the old Texas Stadium site. And while there isn't a definite answer yet, there is momentum. With the news that Oliver McMillan has been engaged by the city to take a detailed look at what is possible. A 90-acre site in the middle of 6 million people, surrounded by expanded freeways and light rail system, hosts tremendous opportunity for all of us. Irving hotels are very strong when it comes to corporate business, thanks to the quality of our properties and the location, location, location. We enjoy between 2 airports and all of Dallas-Fort Worth. But when we lose out on business, we're beaten by cities that have great destination districts, places where visitors can easily be turned loose for an evening to explore lots of different options. We've been waiting on Water Street for a long time, and we're glad to see the city's support continue moving that forward. That is a premier site in the urban center stage of the Mustang sculptures. Filling in that piece of landscape is critical on many fronts. The North Shore project to the east will animate the Dart Convention Center station, with this mix of a boutique hotel, restaurants, and residential. And we're particularly excited that the Irving Music Factory will start to take shape later this year, when the entertainment complex gets out of the ground. Back in 2007, the Irving Hotel Association supported a 2% hotel tax on our guests to make this happen, and we're glad it's finally coming to a reality. News of the Westin as the brand of the headquarter hotel is big. Westin is a high-performing brand in the convention market and as successful as our 3-year-old convention center has already been. We're going to see it becoming more so with the Westin flag flying next door. The addition of that hotel will allow us to compete for state and national association conventions and larger corporate groups, all requiring attached headquarter hotel before Irving can be considered. This property will generate new demand for all of Irving's benefit. With Starwood's commitment to also manage the property, that is a win-win for Irving and a sign of real support and strength from the top of this new hotel. With a long-awaited addition of headquarters hotel adjacent to the convention center, the entertainment district that will wrap and complete it, Water Street, North Shore, and what's next to come to Texas Stadium site, Irving Hotels will be armed to combat the single biggest objection that we have to overcome in our sales effort. When our customers ask, what's there to do? The answer is going to be a lot. I'd now like to ask David Cole to give an outlook from the restaurant industry for 2014. Owner of E. Fratelli and past president of the Greater Dallas Restaurant Association, David serves as the restaurant's industry representative on the ICV board.
In 2012, Irving visitors spent $327 million here on restaurants. so they contributed a lot to our bottom line. Irving restaurateurs cut a broad path. There's a lot of small business owners, like my family, and certainly a lot of corporate chains. Because the Irving area is so dependent on the state of corporate America, our successes rise and fall directly with the state of the economy. 2013 saw a continued increase in consumer confidence, which led to continued spending in our restaurants. This past year saw a lot of new restaurant openings throughout Irving. FM Smokehouse just marked its first anniversary and is garnering great attention for its approach to roadhouse food. Rodizio Grill brought Irving a second Brazilian-style steakhouse with its Heritage District's Villa Grill, holding court as the first. Among the others, Twin Peaks added a brewery, Tilted Kilt added, well, let's just say it added plaid. And Faux Chateau gives the MacArthur and Rural area one of the most diverse restaurant blocks in the area. Positive changes made to the city's RAB zoning this past year will make Irving an even more attractive location for residents in the future. One of the next to open in Irving will finally be our own Fuzzy's Tacos, turning a long vacated gas station into a lively and hip taco stand at MacArthur and 114. Nationally, driven by a stronger economy, restaurant industry sales are expected to hit a record high in 2014. According to the National Restaurant Association's Restaurant Industry Forecast Report, restaurant and food service sales are projected to total $683.4 billion in 2014. That is 3.6% up from 2013. In 2014, the restaurant industry will employ 13.5 million individuals and remain the nation's second largest private sector employer. The restaurant workforce continued to grow at a robust rate in 2013, keeping the industry among the economy's leaders in job creation. Eating and drinking places are projected to add jobs at a 2.8% rate in 2014, which will represent the 15th consecutive year in which industry job growth outpaced the overall economy. Texas is projected to see a 15% growth in jobs in the food service industry in the next 10 years, second only to Arizona. The biggest challenges to the restaurant industry's growth locally and nationally come down to regulation and its impacts on vulnerable bottom lines. Beyond the financial trends, the restaurant industry also reflects the temperature of the world around us in other ways. For 2014, you'll continue to see the influence of locally grown items on menus, with sustainability being a key issue. Our customers want to know what they're eating and where their food came from. Healthy meals are more than just January resolutions, and gluten-free options are becoming a requirement for every operator, even pizza and pasta. Artisan touches are wanted everywhere, whether it's handcrafted cocktails, breads, or cheeses. The far reach of channels like the Food Network have created a tremendous interest in all things food, a desire to interact with the chef, sommelier, mixologist, or pitmaster. While dining choices have always been personal, they are now expected to have personality as well. So it's a very good thing we have the Cole brothers here in Irving. I'm just kidding, but not really. Thank you. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our chairman, Robert Martinez.
During a board strategic planning retreat a few years back, we talked about how we could also acknowledge those in our community who benefit the industry we serve in its bottom line. Through that discussion came the evolution of the Spirit of Irving Awards, which we are presenting for the first time today to recognize outstanding achievement and contributions to the hospitality industry and to the Irving community. This is an interesting award. I think it deserves a little commentary. Typically, and I was asked about this by the ICTN folks, typically you expect in the hospitality industry to see organizations or companies awarded who you'd be familiar with, hotels, restaurants, that sort of thing. We honor corporations and companies here in Irving with this award because of the unseen impact. You don't realize the amount of contribution that our corporate citizens make to the hospitality industry, and this is our attempt to recognize that. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, David Bratton. Dave is the founding and managing director of Destination and Analysts. Dave's past includes time as an economist for the U.S. Department of Commerce and a researcher and marketer for the San Francisco Convention and Visitors Bureau before starting his company, Destination Analysts. His annual State of the Travel Industry is anticipated by many across the industry, and his comments here today will take a look at the horizon and what's happening here in Irving and nationwide. Please welcome Dave Bratton.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Maura, for inviting me to come out here to see you all in Irving. I'm from California, and we're kind of touchy-feely out there. It's the granola state, fruits and nuts on a bed of flakes, right? And I like to pride myself on being in touch with my feelings, but I've never quite understood why I love coming to Irving so much. But I really, really love coming out here, and I think it must be something about the people. You always have a very gracious, lovely group of people, and it's always very fun to be here. I'm going to talk to you today about the state of the travel industry, particularly about leisure travel. I'll start and talk a little bit about Irving and your market. Then we'll talk about how Americans are feeling about travel in the next year, and talk a bit further about how they feel about the Dallas area, which should have a very big impact on you guys. And it's interesting to see all the new development that's going on here and the things people are talking about. And I hope that with the new kind of leisure-oriented focus of some of this stuff, that this will have a particular meaning to you. And then I'm going to share with you some information from a new study we did of international travelers, and I'll share with you what they think about the Dallas area. So it might be kind of interesting, a new perspective on who you all are. The chart you see up there on the slide deck right now shows Irving's hotel market mix through the first 3 quarters of this last year, 2013. And we see, as Greg said, the business traveler is really your bread and butter right now, accounting for 50% of your traffic. And it's really interesting because Irving has kind of a to-die-for demographic of your hotel visitor. Your annual household income is $110,000 per year. 90% of the people who come here and stay in your hotels are employed or self-employed. 60-some% of them are in joint income households. So they have a lot of money and they spend a ton here while they're in town, averaging about $266 per person per day for every day they're here in town in your restaurants and your hotels and your shops. So very big business. But you can see there that about 1 in 4 are here for leisure, the green segments of the chart you see there. So it is an important market to you all. One of the really interesting things here, the white bar there, 5% are just passing through. And we do studies for a lot of different cities and smaller towns around the country, and I've never seen it this high anywhere else. And I suspect that that's probably because of your location next to the airport, highlighting the importance of that to your visitor mix as well. And I think I'd like you to keep that in mind as we go through this data today, because there's some interesting stuff, especially with international travelers, that might be of interest to you. So one thing I want to point out to you is that the data I'm going to share with you today is hot off the press. It's so hot off the press that my staff hasn't even seen it yet. I was working on it this weekend frantically trying to get it ready for you all. And there are 2 studies I'm going to show you. The first is of American leisure travelers. This is a study we call the State of the American Traveler. It's something we do every 6 months. We survey 2,000 American leisure travelers. And what we do is we go out to a nationally representative sample of American adults, and we ask them if they've traveled in the past year, and if they have, for leisure, they're allowed to take the survey. So we end up with a very large sample of Americans from all walks of life, all geographies, that represent the typical American leisure traveler. And what we see right now is considerable strength in their enthusiasm for leisure travel in the upcoming year. The chart you see here shows the average number of trips the typical American leisure traveler takes in a year, and right now it's at about 4.8. It was unchanged from this summer, but it's been very stable for the last several years. And one of the things we always ask, well, think about your travel in the past year and what you're going to do in the upcoming year. Are you going to travel more, less? Is it going to be the same as before? What are your expectations? And we see that in this chart you see here shows the expectations for travel in the upcoming year. And again, this survey was conducted like 2 weeks ago, so it's hot off the press, as I said. We see we've had a slight increase from this summer, but there's this typical thing we see in this data where summertime is low, wintertime is high, and that tends to repeat itself. So we've actually had a little bit of a dip from a year ago, but still very strong by historical standards. The thing I would point out to you is the percent of people who say they're going to cut back has been consistently going down, especially during the recession. This was very high. In the last few years, it started to pare itself back quite a bit. When we look at spending, we see the same story. We ask, are you going to spend more for leisure travel? Are you going to hold the line, or are you going to start cutting back in the upcoming year? It's exactly the same story. Travelers are feeling optimistic. They're being, they're going to be, we think, this next year spending a good deal while they travel. So it looks like it's going to be an excellent year for leisure, for the leisure segments. A couple of things we've noticed. One of the things we ask on this survey is we ask what's kept you from traveling more in the past year. And the one thing we've seen over the last few years is the percentage of Americans who say that gasoline prices are keeping them from traveling is consistently dropping. It's been dropping steadily over the last 3 years, down to about a third of Americans who say that now. Very important. I know you guys are next to the airport, one of the biggest airports in the world, but 80% of American leisure travel is by car. So it's super important that gas prices are moderating or falling a lot. Another thing we ask about is if your personal financial situation has kept you from traveling more than you'd like, and that's also been improving over the years, as well as the price of airfare. Declining airfares are keeping people traveling as well. Safety, one of the things we've talked about a lot since 9/11, is pretty much a non-issue. Only about 1 in 10 travelers feel that safety issues keep them from traveling. So what we see is a positively optimistic outlook for future travel in this year. But there's one thing I wanted to point out to you, which I think is interesting, a big trend we've seen in the data over the last few years. We ask about things that you're going to actively be doing during the next year to help pull off your travel. And one of the things we ask about is, are you going to be actively looking for discounts or deals? And you guys probably remember, if you were hanging around the industry, after the most recent recession, a lot of the talking heads and the people who were, the opinion formers in the industry were talking about this new reality we were facing, where forever we're going to have to be discounting from now on. Everybody's going to always want discounts. It's our new reality, but that's changing a lot. We see that from a high of about 66% of travelers after the recession saying they were going to be looking for discounts, it's dropped down to 43% in the most recent survey, a very significant drop of 35% over the last several years. So maybe the days of having to discount to attract people have come to an end. That'd be a very positive thing for all of us involved in the industry. So let's talk about the Metroplex. In the survey of American leisure travelers, we asked about a whole bunch of different cities. And I'm going to show you where Dallas ranks. Now, I know it's not Irving, but Dallas is the big flagship brand here in the Metroplex. So let's look at this, and I know you're not going to be able to read this, but we asked about familiarity with different destinations in America. Basically, tell us, how familiar are you with these destinations as a place to go for fun and games, for leisure travel? And you can see that, interestingly, Dallas shows up as number 4 in our list of 50 American destinations. Wow, pretty surprising, isn't it? You think it might be well behind the big names of Vegas and New York and the like, but there's a really interesting nuance to this data. Little boxes I just flew in there show some of the bigger cities, the New York, the San Francisco, Los Angeles, and the like. They have very high numbers in the familiar and the very familiar, but very few people said they're slightly familiar. So these are all ranked on that top 3 box score ratio here. And the thing about Dallas, it doesn't do very well on the familiar and the very familiar, but a lot of people have slight familiarity with it, if that makes sense. So it seems like there's a broad familiarity with the product here, but it's not very deep. Another thing we talked about is appeal. We asked, well, how appealing are these destinations in terms of a place to visit? And basically, how exciting is it to go to these places? And this always breaks my heart, because whenever you do a question like this, Las Vegas always shows up as number 1. And as a person who likes authenticity, I like nice people, I like good food, things like that. I hate it when Vegas always is the winner on this. But you can see that Dallas doesn't do quite as well. It's over on the right-hand side. And just to explain this data, Vegas is on the top left. As you go down, there's less and less appeal. So I believe you guys came in 33rd out of the 50 metro areas here that we tested. Now, I'll tell you this as a person who's done tourism research for a long time, familiarity drives appeal. If people understand you and they know you, they're going to rate you high on your appeal typically, because when they go there, they have a good time, they enjoy it. People talk well about it. I think that might be one of the bigger issues for developing the leisure travel product here for the Dallas area, is getting people educated about all the great things you have going on and the great things that are going to be happening evidently here in the near future. Let's talk about the international market. And this is something that is new to us. We hadn't done international tracking studies until this year, and we wanted to kind of mimic what we'd done domestically to see what foreigners think about us, what they think about our cities and all. And I think this data is fascinating, and if you're interested in how the world sees us, you might think so as well. So what we did is we went out to these 12 countries, which are America's largest feeder markets. Everybody from Canada to India, Italy, United Kingdom, Japan, Germany, China. And we did a survey of 800 internationally oriented travelers. These are people who travel and feel that they're at least likely in the next year to go abroad. It's not your typical Chinese person. It's a Chinese person who's looking out and wanting to travel. So let's talk a little bit about this. And I'm going to show you very similar metrics to what we showed you with America. This chart you see here shows the percent of people in each country who feel like they're going to increase their international travels in the next year. Think of it as a mirror to that question we talked about before with the Americans. Are you going to travel more? Are you going to travel the same? Or are you going to travel less in the upcoming 12 years internationally? So the one thing that really sticks out to me here is that most of the developed countries are very much like America. 30, 20, some percent say, yeah, I'm going to increase my international travels in the next year. When we flip that around and talk about spending, we see the same story exactly. That those emerging markets are way more enthusiastic about going abroad in the upcoming year. I guess the real question is, are they going to come to America? Do they like us? With all the bad press we get, or at least the bad press we see here, does anybody want to come here? Well, interestingly, we did a question where we gave them 3 blanks, and we said, what are the 3 countries you most want to visit for leisure? And you can see here, these are the numbers of the percent that said the United States. Brazil, my eyes are bad, I'm going to move closer, 50% wrote in America. Canada, 45, Japan, 43, India, 43, China, 41, all number 1. America was number 1 in 9 of the top 12 markets. Only 3 of the European countries didn't give us a number 1 rating. So we have this massive interest in traveling, expectations to increase their travel over the next year, increase spending, and they want to come to America. The good news about these emerging markets, too, is they're the ones that want to spend. We asked them, if you're going to take a 2-week vacation to America, how much would you likely spend on it? We asked them, of course, in their currency, and we converted it back to American dollars. And we see the biggies here: China, Australia, and Brazil. So not only are they the ones that are going to travel, the ones that want to come to America, they look like they're the ones that have the deep pockets. And The top 3 countries that think they're familiar with what you guys have here in the Metroplex are India, Mexico, and Brazil. I suppose Mexico and Brazil are no surprise given their proximity and all, but those are the top 3. The bottom 3 were Japan, Germany, and Canada. And you'll see when I talk about appeal too how this plays out. Anybody want to guess what the top country is of people who've been to the Dallas area? Mexico. Swamps all the others, way, way bigger than all the other countries. Your bottom countries are Korea, Japan, Italy, UK, and France. And Mexico, typical Mexican internationally oriented travel is 6 times as likely to have been to the Dallas area as travelers from those other countries. Okay, let's talk about appeal, where the rubber hits the road. Do they like you? Are they interested in you? Well, about half of all internationally oriented travelers in these countries said that they were at least slightly, they found the Dallas area to be at least slightly appealing. Again, upper middle section here among the American destinations we tested. The top 3 countries for appeal were, interestingly, India, Mexico, and Brazil. The ones that found you the most exciting as a place to visit. The bottom 3, Japan, Canada, and South Korea. I have one more slide, and I'm going to leave you alone with all this data, but I thought this was especially interesting. We gave them a list of what we called iconic American experiences, a list of about 50-some, and said, which of these, if you were taking a trip to America, would you most want to do? And please pick at least, or at most 10. So we wanted them to really identify the ones that they were most interested in doing. And the table you see here shows the proportion for all internationally oriented foreign travelers that we surveyed that selected each of these iconic destinations. And amazingly, New York seems to have a monopoly on this. Niagara Falls, Times Square, the Empire State Building were the top 3 iconic destinations that they wanted to go to. Following that, California seems to have a stranglehold on number 2 with San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge, Hollywood Walk of Fame, things like that. And very interestingly, the 3 that we have in the Dallas area here, Daley Plaza, Stockyards, and South Fork Ranch, came out almost near the bottom. So what does this tell us? I think it says something about your iconic, the perception they have about your big icons here in the region, that they might not be the most powerful draw, or at least certainly they fit in with the lack of familiarity we saw. I don't mean to end this on a negative note at all, but it might be something you think about when you all start working with the international markets and reaching out to them, that these particular things may not be the strongest draw, and that may be other things you want to speak to these audiences about. So that is a little wrap-up of how we see things going for the Dallas area and for Irving, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for attending, and please drive safely on your way home.